The lights inside the America's Got Talent studio glowed in brilliant colors as the crowd waited for the next act. The air was thick with excitement and curiosity, but no one could have predicted what was about to happen. From behind the curtain, a small boy stepped forward, his hands trembling, his heart pounding as though it would burst from his chest. He was only 12 years old, a Filipino boy named Eli, standing on one of the biggest stages in the world. He wore a shining white sequin suit with golden trims that sparkled under the stage lights, a black fedora resting perfectly on his short black hair, and a tiny silver microphone pendant hanging over his chest. His light brown skin glistened slightly with nervous sweat, and yet there was a spark in his eyes, a quiet determination born from countless nights of dreaming. He took one slow step forward and looked up at the towering judges panel: Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum and Howie Mandel. The crowd fell silent. Simon leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, his face curious but unreadable. "Hello there," Simon said in his familiar British accent, his tone calm but expectant. "What's your name, young man?" Eli's small voice echoed through the microphone, trembling slightly. "My name is Eli, I'm 12 years old, and I'm from the Philippines." The crowd clapped politely. Sofia's eyes lit up. "How adorable," she said with her warm smile. Heidi nodded and added, "Welcome to AGT, Eli." Simon tilted his head. "And what are you going to do for us today?" There was a pause. Eli looked down at the stage floor, took a deep breath, and then looked straight into Simon's eyes. "I'm going to perform a tribute to my hero, Michael Jackson." The words hit the room like a wave of surprise. Sofia's jaw dropped slightly. "Oh my gosh, really?" Heidi's eyebrows shot up. "That's a big choice," she said. "Those are big shoes to fill." Simon leaned back in his chair with a small smirk. "Indeed," he said, his tone teasing but intrigued. "You must be very brave." Eli smiled nervously, his fingers gripping the microphone tighter. "I've been practicing for years," he said softly. "I just want to make my mom proud." The audience clapped again, sensing the emotion behind his words. Simon gave a small nod. "All right, Eli," he said, "let's see what you've got." The lights dimmed instantly, the room falling into near darkness except for a single white spotlight shining down on the tiny boy. The opening beat of Billie Jean began to play. The crowd cheered softly, and Eli's heartbeat raced faster. Then he moved. The first step was sharp, precise. He slid backward, twisted, spun, and stopped in perfect rhythm. Every movement was clean, controlled, and astonishingly fluid. The moment he began to sing, the judges froze. His voice carried that same smooth, soulful quality Michael Jackson was known for. But it had something else too. It had the raw innocence of a child who had poured his heart into every word. The crowd started clapping in rhythm, phones went up to record, and the judges' faces began to shift from polite interest to stunned disbelief. Sofia turned to Heidi and whispered, "Oh my God, he's really doing it." Heidi's hand covered her mouth. Howie was already smiling, nodding along to the beat, and Simon, usually so hard to impress, slowly leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, completely focused on Eli. The boy hit every beat, every spin, every glide, his black shoes gliding across the floor like he was floating. The fedora tilted perfectly as he did the moonwalk, and the audience screamed in shock. He wasn't just copying Michael Jackson, he was channeling him. His expression, his rhythm, his posture, it was as if the king of pop had come alive again through this small Filipino boy. The stage lights began to flash in gold and blue. Eli's energy grew with every second. His arms stretched out, his feet slid across the stage, his fingers snapped in rhythm. He moved with passion, precision, and joy, and behind that joy, there was something deeper. Every motion carried the story of a boy who practiced for hours in a cramped living room, dancing on cracked floor tiles, watching old YouTube clips on his mother's worn-out phone. Every spin and step was a reflection of nights when he stayed up past midnight, copying Michael's every move while his mother clapped softly, whispering, "One day, Anak, they will see you." By the time Ellie hit the chorus, the entire theater was on its feet. The audience screamed his name, and even the cameramen were zooming in on his glowing face. He jumped, spun, landed, and then slid backward effortlessly, his feet barely seeming to touch the ground. His breathing grew heavier, sweat trickling down his forehead, but he never broke focus. He was no longer Eli the shy boy. He was Eli the performer, the dreamer, the reincarnation of rhythm. Then came the final pose. The iconic Michael Jackson stance, one arm stretched out, hat tilted down, one foot crossed behind the other. The music stopped, silence filled the room. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the entire audience erupted. The cheers were deafening. People stood up, clapping, shouting, whistling. Heidi jumped to her feet screaming, "Oh my God!" Sofia laughed in disbelief, clapping above her head. Howie gave a standing ovation, but Simon just sat still for a few seconds staring at Illy with wide eyes. Slowly a smile formed on his lips. A real, proud smile. Eli stood there frozen, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. His eyes scanned the crowd in disbelief. Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized they were all standing for him. He had done it. He had brought Michael Jackson back to life, even if just for a few minutes. The lights glowed brighter, reflecting in his tears like tiny golden stars. And then Simon stood up. The crowd's cheering grew even louder. Sofia turned toward him, her hand over her mouth. Heidi whispered, "He's going to do it." Simon reached forward. He looked directly at Eli, his expression both emotional and admiring. "Lee," he said into his microphone, "that was pure magic." The crowd screamed again. Ali's lips parted, his hands trembling. Simon smiled softly and said, "You didn't just imitate Michael Jackson. You honored him. You brought his spirit to life in your own way. And for that." He paused, looking at the golden buzzer in front of him. The crowd started chanting, "Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer!" Sofia shouted, "Do it, Simon!" And Heidi was already nodding eagerly. Simon raised his hand and slammed it down on the golden buzzer. The sound echoed through the theater like thunder. In an instant, golden confetti exploded from the ceiling, raining down in sparkling waves. The music swelled into a dramatic crescendo, and Eli dropped to his knees, crying uncontrollably. The golden lights danced around him as the confetti showered his small figure, turning the stage into a dreamlike scene. The crowd screamed his name over and over. "Aliyah!" As he covered his face, unable to stop the tears, Simon walked toward the stage, smiling from ear to ear. Sofia and Heidi clapped wildly and Howie gave Eli a thumbs up. "That was amazing," Sofia shouted. "He's a star." Heidi wiped tears from her eyes and said, "You are incredible. You gave us Michael Jackson for a few minutes, but you also gave us something new. You gave us you." Simon reached the edge of the stage and looked up at the crying boy. "Michael Jackson would be proud of you, Eli," he said. "You've got that same spark. The heart, the rhythm, the soul. You're going to be a star." Ali could barely speak through his tears. Thank you, sir," he stammered. The crowd continued to cheer as the confetti kept falling. This is for my mom," he said into the microphone, his voice cracking. "She always told me to follow my dreams. I did this for her and for the Philippines." The audience roared with emotion. Sofia clapped her hands together and said, "Your mom must be so proud right now." Heidi added, "You've made the whole world proud tonight." As the golden confetti settled slowly on the floor, the camera zoomed in on Eli's tear-streaked face. He looked up toward the ceiling, letting the shimmering gold flakes fall onto his cheeks and hair. Somewhere in the middle of all that noise, he could almost hear his mother's voice whispering, "I told you, Anak, one day the world will see you." He smiled through his tears, overwhelmed by the moment. Behind him, the AGT logo shone brighter than ever, a symbol of the dream that had just come true. When he finally walked offstage, the cheers still echoed behind him. Backstage, the crew congratulated him, and even Terry Crews gave him a big hug. "You did it, little man," Terry said proudly. Eli laughed and cried at the same time, holding onto the silver microphone pendant around his neck. "I can't believe it," he whispered. "It's real." His mother's face flashed in his mind. How she used to save a few coins so he could buy data to watch dance videos, how she'd clap softly every time he got a move right, how she'd smile and say, "Someday, you'll be on that big American stage." Now he was. News of his performance would spread across the world in the coming days. Millions would watch the clip online, commenting things like, "The reincarnation of MJ," and "The pride of the Philippines." TV stations back home would replay his performance again and again, and kids across Manila would start trying to moonwalk just like Eli. But for the boy himself, none of that mattered as much as one simple truth. He had made his mother proud. That night, as the AGT stage lights dimmed and the crowd began to leave, Eli stood quietly in a corner of the backstage hallway. Still clutching a handful of golden confetti, he smiled softly, whispering to himself, "Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mom." For a moment, the world outside seemed to fade. All he could feel was the warmth of that golden light and the echo of thousands of people cheering for him. It was a feeling he would never forget. The moment a 12-year-old boy from the Philippines made the world believe again in the power of dreams, music, and magic. He had come with nothing but hope and left with everything he had ever wished for. The boy who once danced barefoot on cracked tiles now stood as a global sensation. And as he walked out of the studio, still wiping tears from his cheeks, the cameras caught one last image. Eli smiling under the soft glow of the streetlights, his fedora tilted, his heart full. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of "Billie Jean" played on a radio and the boy began to dance again, this time not to prove anything, but simply because he loved it. That night, a star was born, and his name was Eli, the 12-year-old Filipino boy who brought Michael Jackson back to life and in doing so, discovered the rhythm of his own destiny.